Have you missed it? Like, do you kind of think, I should have got in on Bitcoin?
I don't spend a lot
5 years ago.
Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin is something that certainly a lot of people think, is going to rise as an alternative currency.
The Australian Bitcoin Podcast, presented by Hard Rock.
It's not a currency, it's not money. I don't understand it.
G'day, welcome to another episode of the Australian Bitcoin Podcast, episode 94? Yeah, 94. I'm DJ and Mike is MIA, actually. He's over at the Bitcoin Asia conference with Hardblock founder and CEO Daniel Wilkaczynski. And so in his spot today, we've got a very special guest with a doctorate in Bronomics and a fellow Aussie Bitcoiner, Mr. Thomas Fahrer, co-founder of Apollo Sats. Thomas, g'day, mate.
Hey, g'day. Thanks for having me.
No worries, man. It's a pleasure. It's always good to have guests on the Australian Bitcoin Podcast. And, in the Australian scene, well, let me ask you, have you ever been to a bush bash?
No, I've never been. I met plenty that have, and I hear great things, but no, I've never been myself.
You'll have to get to one, man. They're arguably one of the highest signal events in the world, for my humble opinion. Anyway, we'll click over to the dashboard real quick. We're recording this on the 28th of August, 2025. Block height, 912,039. The Bitcoin price is 173,612 in Australian dollar dues, which equates to around about 113,000 US cuck bucks. So we've had a decline from the all-time high since we last recorded with Mike, around 10%, just over 10%, 10.4. And the hash rate keeping steady at 949.5 exahash, which is cool. Normally, Tom, what we do on these shows is we kind of riff on the news of the last couple of weeks, which I'm certainly keen to do, but I'm also keen to just have a chat with you about your experience in Bitcoin and what you've been doing, how you got into the space. And, I think there's a lot of value to be had from people listening in to people whose stories they may not have heard before, and, they can kind of learn from them and what they've seen, what they've done, whether they've gone through the altcoin U-turn and so on and so forth. So it's a pleasure to have you on, man.
No, thanks. Happy to riff, happy to chat, see how we go.
All right, so we had Bitcoin flash crash. It was a 4K wick last weekend on the Sunday, and as I was saying at the top, the current levels are still within that 10% of all-time highs. So we're certainly not in a bear market, quote unquote. It's certainly not like it was in the past. We've had 80% drawdowns, or it's just crashed and crashed and crashed. I don't know. Were you around, let's see, was it March 2020, sort of just before the COVID thing kicked off, and the price just wicked down and down and down and down. I think it went from like 10,000 roughly to around about 2. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it bottomed at 3, but it was that was just such an incredible time in the world. Like it was crazy in Bitcoin, but it was such just an incredible experience, because you had this feeling of, obviously it didn't work out that way, but the feeling at the time, this is like March 2020, it feels like the plague is upon us, and you're watching just Bitcoin just absolutely nuke, and it's like, holy shit. The funny thing was, I remember even at the time, being, it didn't even, it felt so surreal, because normally, in normal daily life, you're like, oh, Bitcoin's down 10% in the last week or whatever. But at this point in time, it's like, well, if, the freaking plague is upon us, like, whatever. This is like, you're not even like really, you're just
It's like
thinking like the
icing on the
whole
cake.
everything is like it's like the world is coming crashing down. It was just honestly, I look back on it like fond memories. It was pretty funny, but
I don't think I've ever been that entertained on Twitter ever, either before or
absolutely.
since. You know, like some of the memes and just the chatter that was going on Bitcoin Twitter at the time was phenomenal. I'll never forget like the Jon Snow GIF kept coming up and up and up. The one where he's like just the single man ready to face that horde of whatever it was from Game of Thrones. And that was kind of what it felt like to be a Bitcoiner who was hodling through that entire crash. And there was people, you know, losing their minds, not to call him out or anything, but Nuggets News, that fella Alex Saunders, you know, he was having a massive fit about like there should have been a circuit breaker at Bitfinex. Something should have been halting the price up. And I'm like, that's not how this works. Like, let it go. This is great.
Well, also that's like such a funny example of someone that just doesn't understand how any of this works. I mean, we don't have to talk about should or should not. Like, this is a free market. There's nobody out there with the power to put in a circuit breaker. Like, nobody at Bitfinex can do anything about it, right? Like there's nothing that can be done. So it's just a hilarious. I mean, people just don't get it. Well, of course, that was 5 years ago.
It was a little while ago, but I think there's that sort of element of boredom and mild saltiness creeping in at the moment because all of these all-time highs are just kind of like these little like run-ups. Then there's nothing explosive, there's nothing parabolic, and so that high effectively that you get both literally and metaphorically, you know, it's been lacking. And so I guess there is that kind of Bitcoiner privilege to have sort of witnessed that and to have felt that, which is a little bit absent at the moment. It's usually a lot of Bitcoiners that have been around for at least more than 2 cycles. And, you know, you see sort of, there's just a bit of a lackluster, whereas it's actually quite, when you think about it, it's actually quite nice that we're just slowly chipping away at this thing, you know, reaching higher, going higher. So last weekend, we had one entity sell a giant tranche of Bitcoin after about 7 years, which, as I mentioned, tanked the market 4,000 in like minutes. I remember, I think I was at the Rise Mofo initiative that we hosted over the weekend. We can talk about that later. But thankfully, the price was holding up that entire day. And I was able to, you know, buy coffee and a bunch of other things from the cafe at a relative discount. Had I have done it 24 hours later, it would have cost me a little bit more, you know, even with the 50% discount. But this drop, you know, there's a lot of talk around the traps. Basically, one person was saying that the entity was sort of waiting for these prices and then taking profit at sort of, what was it, 116, 115 US. I'm curious to know why they wouldn't have taken price or taken profits rather at like anything north of 118, 19, 20. I mean, we hit 124.5. Pretty sure that was the lightest all-time high. You know, why would you wait for it to drop down? I don't know, moving coins, who knows? But yeah, thoughts?
Well, two separate things. I mean, nobody can quote unquote time the top. So obviously, if they were looking to sell, if it was a sort of someone that was just looking in general to sell, then the fact that they're willing to sell at 115 and not 122 isn't so shocking because, yeah, you're sitting at 122, but you don't know that's the top. You might be thinking, oh, we're going to 135. So you don't know. But I will say, my suspicion is that this isn't the case of it's like some investor, that's some hodler that's just, you know, quote unquote looking to get out now because they're just happy with the price. I don't think that's the case, and the reason being because if that was the case, you wouldn't dump all the coins on a weekend. Basically, you would DCA, and you would do it during the week when there's more liquidity. It looks like, just by the fact that someone unleashed a clip of coins at the lowest liquidity point of the week. It's the kind of behavior, that's the kind of thing people do when it's like, there's a heavy financialization of Bitcoin right now, so that who knows what kind of put options and shorts they've put on in some other domain, and then they dump these coins to try and profit off the change in price. I think it's much more likely something like that happened, as opposed to someone that's like, oh, I've been holding for 7 years and I've just reached my target, and now I'm going to, sell out to hold my money in my bank account. Like, I don't think that's I don't think that's what's going on here. I think it's more like, we've set up some put options, set up some shorts, whatever. Who knows exactly what they're doing, but it's just based on the behavior. That seems a much more likely.
Interesting.
Likely thing.
Yeah, look, I am totally left side of the bell curve when it comes to these sorts of things. So thankfully, we do have that doctor in the house in Bronomics, because that's just not me. I'm more think boy, get me spiraling out into sort of esoteric realms. I'll be with you all day. Probably the worst host to host a Bitcoin news show, but I do find it interesting that there's obviously, yes, that financialization. The institutions are well and truly in Bitcoin, and now they're applying effectively some of their games potentially to see how they apply to the Bitcoin network. Agree?
Yes, that's definitely happening. But then also, like, this has been happening for such a long time in Bitcoin as well, in the sense of, I would say there's probably more price manipulation going on several years ago than there is today. I mean, not to say that clearly, like, the stuff like that is happening today, but this has been going on as long as Binance has been around, right? And like,
right,
yeah, like, this is not, this is not like, oh, this is a new thing and BlackRock's doing it. Like, no, this is the nature of the game, the nature of the beast. It just is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, look, so at the end of the day, if there are new people into the space, and you do get that sometimes. I can remember early doors, you'd have like a chunk of change, you'd send it to the exchange, for instance, Hardblock, and you would sort of wait to pull the trigger. You're not sure, like, do I buy it now? Do I wait? Maybe tomorrow it's going to be lower and I'll get more sats. And that's that sort of early doors training ground that you have to walk in order to realize that it doesn't matter. And what you really should be doing is DCAing, because then you can just stop worrying about it and just, as they say, stack sats and stay humble. So it's not bad news for Bitcoin. This 4K wick, I mean, as we said at the top, this is nothing. We've seen much, much worse over the years. And the point is that the person, the entity, whatever it was that was selling this Bitcoin, they still apparently have about 152,000 left over, which is around $17 billion. So, they're not really missing them. And if it was some big whale that just wanted to upgrade their lifestyle, well, then God bless, all the best with that. We had David Bailey, who is obviously over at Bitcoin Asia, or maybe not obviously, at the moment, and we'll get to that in a minute. But he was, there's a lot of speculation around the bull market and the bear market. And is the bull market done? We hit all-time highs towards the beginning of 2024 when the ETFs were first launched, and then towards the end of the year. And relatively speaking, it's been fairly quiet the last 8 months. I mean, we have had, as I said, another all-time high a couple of weeks ago. But generally speaking, the last 8 months in Bitcoin have been calm.
Sure.
How are you seeing it? Like from some of your from your standpoint, where do you think we're at?
Yeah, I mean, it has been this sideways chop for a while, which I think that we're just at a stage of Bitcoin's development, which is that it's sufficiently large, all the institutional players are in it, that I think that some of the volatility of the past is probably gone. It's just it's a big asset now. It's a $2 trillion asset. Not to say you can't have like pretty huge swings. I still expect to see triple digit returns happening in the future in like a year perspective, right? But not. I don't think, you know, I think it's pretty unlikely we're going to see situations like we had in 2020 appearing. It might never again. You know, Bitcoin, I think 5x'd in the space of 6 months. Like that was a kind of crazy period. I did that in 2019 and this sort of thing. But I think it's more likely to be a little bit more muted now because it's much bigger. It's just a huge asset. So it has like a different level of holders, right? It's great for people. I guess I would say it's in that stage that maybe it's more closer to what, like, I don't know, Google in 2010 was or something, where it's like, you know, still got a freaking great decade ahead of it, but it's not necessarily going to 4x in a quarter. Like if that's what you're looking for, you probably need to examine why you're looking for it. Yeah, or frankly, I mean, yeah, like that, and that's part of what's creating this like this sort of Bitcoin treasury cycle, because those things are so volatile. They're gonna, like, if you want the asset that's gonna do 10x and then negative 80% and then this sort of thing. Well, yeah, those the little treasury companies will do that, the penny treasury companies. But Bitcoin itself, I just think we're probably past it. You know, there'll still be cycles and this sort of thing because the dollar is volatile. Like the you know, it's an exchange rate. It's a Bitcoin dollar exchange rate, and the dollar is manipulated up and down by the central bankers, and it's going to create credit cycles and this sort of thing. So it's going to that's going to cause massive fluctuations. It is going to show itself up in the exchange rate, of the Bitcoin dollar exchange rate. But when you're just in a period of relative dollar stability, there's no reason to think you would have crazy moves in Bitcoin one way or the other. So I think that's just where we're the stage we're at the moment. You know, it just means like adjust your expectations, but also it's like I don't know. I still feel like extremely bullish if you think about this over like what's Bitcoin's future over the next decade. It looks great. Looks great. Even you know, next 3 years looks great. But you know, if you're looking at like 50x over the next 3 years, like you're gonna have to find something else, because it's like probably it's really unlikely to happen with Bitcoin.
Yeah, temper your expectations and let it be. There is like a slight whiff of entitlement from some corners of the Bitcoin ecosystem that's sort of demanding. You know, we have a face ripping 10x over the course of a couple of days or whatever it is. You know, they're all just missing out on that initial fix that they got back in 17, and you know, that's fine, that's okay. But entitlement isn't a nice way of being, that's for sure. So David Bailey reckons that there is no more bear markets. We're not going to have bear markets for years, he says, due to surging institutional adoption by sovereigns and banks and insurers and corporations, pension funds, etc., etc. And, you know, like, what is it? 0.01% of that total addressable market has actually been captured. And so with that in mind, it does seem, you know, there is an enormous amount of positive news these last sort of 12 months, this last cycle. but it hasn't necessarily been matched in the price that perhaps you might otherwise expect. So, what are you thinking? Is there are we just gonna see a steady chop solidation, to use Mr. Checkmatey's phrase, upwards and to the right, slowly but steadily, like the tortoise, or are we going to rip like a hare, and drag back down again?
No, Bitcoin tends to move in jumps, so it will go sideways for a while, and then it'll jump up, and then it'll go sideways, and then probably jump up, and then at some point it will jump down, because that's how this works. But for the default expectation is chopping sideways and the occasional jump. And I don't agree with David about there won't be any bear markets, but I think if his point is there won't be bear markets based on like a halving cycle, I agree with that. There's no reason to sort of think, oh, there's a bear market coming just because, based on the number of days since the last halving or whatever. That's kind of a debunked idea. But there will be bear markets in the future because it's a dollar Bitcoin exchange, and the dollar is highly volatile. You're going to have situations where, look, a bear market was pretty much guaranteed to happen. A bull and a bear market was programmed in to happen by the central banks when you look last cycle, because they dropped interest rates to zero. They said, we're not even thinking about raising rates for years to come. And so a whole shit ton of money flooded into Bitcoin. And then he said, we're not even thinking about raising rates. And then in the next 2 years embarked on the fastest rate hike in the history of the world. And so that, nobody can predict what's going to happen. But if you did something like that again, it would cause a bull market and a bear market. That's just how people would react to the initial move. Oh, it's going to be zero interest rates for years. People are going to flood into Bitcoin in that scenario. And then when it becomes obvious that that's not what's going to happen, people are going to sell. So there's no, you can't get out of these things just because the dollar is being manipulated. But you can kind of take a long-term frame on this and be like, well, yeah, it's going up.
Maybe we need to spend more time contemplating the color of Juicy J's tie rather than, what he says. That could be a thing, rather than, don't believe what they say if we're not going to think about raising rates and then they just hike them to high heaven. Mind you, they're still pretty low relative to the 80s, to be honest. And I think that we could afford, 16, 17, 18% rate hikes. I'd be down with that. That would be great. But we should potentially concentrate more on, what kind of color suit they're wearing, or tie, rather than what they say, right?
Maybe, I don't know. But the thing is that, to be fair, when you're comparing across, lots of people have talked about this, but there's so much more debt today. So 5% rates, look, we're in Australia. The average house you're going to have to fork out at the bare minimum 1 million, but probably millions to get a nice home. And, when you it's similar in all these Western countries around the world, and they didn't have that level. The housing was in a very, very different situation in the 80s. So yes, they had high interest rates, but high interest rates on your small loan, it makes a big difference. So the economy can't actually handle anywhere close to the kind of rates that they had before. I think they got them probably as high as it possibly realistically could. And it's the same thing, obviously, in the US. They have this debt situation, which, like a public debt situation, they have $37 trillion in debt. So that's why Trump is looking to so desperately trying to get rates down now, because he's thinking that they can save hundreds of billions of dollars in a year in interest rate expense if they can get the rates down. So they put them up as much as they could. They had to try and fight inflation. But yeah, I mean, I don't. You can't really predict what's going to happen, I guess, is the long and the short of it.
No, that's fair enough. You just got to, as I said, DCA into Bitcoin and live your life. Do what you're good at, right?
Sure.
BlackRock's Bitcoin ETFs currently generates annual proceeds of 186 million, more than its flagship S&P 500 ETF, which is curious. It brings in 183 million. So there's a substantial difference there. You've been tracking the ETFs since they launched. Tell me, what's the latest with all of this? BlackRock, they've been selling recently as well. What's the TLDR?
Yeah, so they've got about 747,000 Bitcoin under management, which is so friggin' insane to think that's in the space of 18 months. Like and a couple 100,000, close to this year already. So the big thing about it, I guess, is that last year we had kind of all these ETFs buying. Yes, BlackRock was buying it up, but you also had Fidelity and ARK and Bitwise. There was a lot of huge buying pressure from these ETFs, and this year BlackRock is still getting really nice inflows, but you're just not getting it from any of the other ETFs. Like, they've gone pretty much sideways the entire year. And so, the buying pressure isn't the same as what we had last year, just when you look at just from the ETF's perspective. But as you said, right, BlackRock are already making more money off this Bitcoin ETF than they are their stocks ETF, which is mind-boggling to think about the relative comparison of the sizes of the assets. But you also, like, this is like, I've made this point a bunch of times on Twitter, because it's like, look at the incentive model here. They get a percentage of the assets, right? They make 25 basis points a year. So, like, think about how much they'll be making when Bitcoin goes to $1 million and they hold 1 million coins. They'll be making billions per year in revenue, just off, like, taking a clip each year in perpetuity. So you could put a value, and, like, if you want to put a valuation on that in terms of, like, oh, they get, well, say Bitcoin is at $1 million a year, and they have 1 million coins. At 25 basis points, they're making $2.5 billion a year. But it's not just $2.5 billion once; it's $2.5 billion every year forever. So you might put if you wanted to, like, what's the value of that business? You could slap a multiple on it, and you would slap a pretty aggressive multiple, probably 40 times. So you could easily say that that's worth like $100 billion to BlackRock. So easily, like, if I'm talking, like, if they were to say if BlackRock was to go to, I don't know, Elon Musk and be like, I want to sell you this business, that's the kind of valuation you would put on that. And so it's worth $100 billion to them. And so it's like, what incentive would they have to kind of create that value for themselves? A lot, $100 billion worth. And then it's like, are they a passive player, or do they have some control in the market? Well, a bit of both, right? They don't have, like, complete control about where people invest their money, but they're not a passive player either. They produce model portfolios, they advise their clients, they manage money themselves so they can invest on behalf of other people. So they have all of these different ways of trying to increase the buying pressure of Bitcoin, because, going back to the original point, they have a massive incentive to do it. I do think it's hilarious that hilarious is maybe it's sad, but the best, like, the best, like, who's made the best business in Bitcoin? Well, probably Michael Saylor. MicroStrategy just crushed it. Great. What's the second best business in Bitcoin? Oh, BlackRock's business. And I think that's quite funny, or maybe it's ironic that, like, who is the best Bitcoin entrepreneur? Larry Fink. Larry Fink is. Yeah. And that's just the reality. That's just like, obviously coming from this huge head start of this, like, traditional finance behemoth with BlackRock. And people, certain Bitcoiners can get in their feels about that. It is what it is. But that's the situation. But it's not, if like, I look at it as like a great thing if you're a Bitcoiner, because it's going to pump your bags. So it's not like what are you like? What's to be upset about? I mean.
Yeah, I mean that's right. Like it's so conflicting, man. It's so conflicting. That's the free market at work. Let it do its thing. Uncle Larry is working for me. He's working for you, and that's got to be a good thing, as opposed to the older way where he just wasn't. At least this way, if he wants to wreck the world and instigate some sort of digital panopticon and do all of that WEF nonsense, well, you can pump my bags while I do it, so that I can increase my optionality and depart. That's fine by me. This is why we say you got to save in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is money for enemies.
Are you looking for a simple way to buy Bitcoin in Australia? Hardblock makes buying Bitcoin easy. As Australia's longest running Bitcoin exchange, our mission is to help Aussies simply and easily buy Bitcoin and take it into self-custody. There are no deposit or trading fees, just a clear 1.2% spread whenever you buy or sell, lol. That covers our operating costs, so you always know exactly what you're paying. Withdrawals at just $1.18 AUD or as low as 400 sats with AutoSend. No hidden charges, no surprises, just a fast, reliable, and easy way to stack sats with total transparency. Get started today at hardblock.com.au. Bitcoin made easy for Aussies.
Connecticut recently, what was this? Just recently. I saw this. They've signed a Bitcoin reserve ban into law, basically banning themselves from owning the best performing asset of the last decade, which is curious. Why would you do that? Because there's a lot of other states that are not doing that.
Yeah, I do think it's very interesting the stage that Bitcoin is at as a political asset. I mean, it's just a Republicans versus Democrats thing. Like, it's not. It's like there's benefits to having Trump be promoting Bitcoin, and there's negatives. One of the benefits of having Trump promote Bitcoin is you get a lot of Republicans on your side, and they won't necessarily like understand Bitcoin, but they'll be pro Bitcoin because you've got the orange man is supporting the orange coin. But in the flip side is you just have Democrats that just going to act like spastic and retarded in response. And so, that's just the world we live in. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it really matters for Bitcoin. It's just more curious in terms of like, oh, that's just interesting to observe. I'm just like, oh, well, that's a shame for them.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, like, we certainly aren't even having that conversation whether to ban it or whether to embrace it, adopt it, whatever. In Australia, that's not even on the list of conversations. We just had the productivity roundtable, which is an oxymoron in and of itself, given the fact that the government, by definition, is non-productive. But nonetheless, Bitcoin, I don't think was uttered even once. And despite Bayani and Abib's efforts, it wasn't even on the list. Whatever, we'll let that play out. I'm appreciating your nuanced take on all of these things, Thomas. I must admit, it's refreshing because I'm left side of the bell curve, and I just don't really give much of these things much of a thought. On the weekend, we had the Rise Mofo campaign come to, I guess, kind of fruition with Sats Day. So just in case you weren't following, Thomas, or anyone else for that matter, we partnered up with a small cafe on the Central Coast in New South Wales. Their owner, Jesse, he's been a massive Bitcoiner for a long, long time, been trying to orange pill a lot of his customers, trying to get them to, understand and learn about Bitcoin and then potentially pay in Bitcoin. And we partnered up with him sort of earlier this year, created a bunch of resources and collateral and some initiatives to help him to do that, to orange pill his customers and to encourage them to pay in Bitcoin. So that culminated in a day last Saturday, which we called Sats Day. And a whole bunch of Bitcoiners came down from Sydney, or rather came up from Sydney. A couple of Bitcoiners came down from the north, from around Newcastle. And it was a fun little day, man. There was lots of good chats, lots of good vibes. A lot of people that were not necessarily interested in Bitcoin. There was one fella, Craig, who rocked up just to buy a coffee for the first time. He didn't even realize the day was happening. Sees one of the posters that we've got, starts asking questions, and then next minute, myself, Craig, and Jesse were all having a bit of a conversation about the benefits of Bitcoin, and he was paying for his coffee. Jesse actually gave him some Sats that so we sort of donated a bunch of Sats for the cause so that we could get people to sort of get the experience of paying in Bitcoin. But so he was buying his coffee, which was roughly $6.40, and he was paying that in Bitcoin and getting 50% off, which was pretty neat. And just seeing that ease of how he was able to work that, sort of really clicked, piqued his interest, I suppose, which was cool. The thing I wanted to mention is Wallet of Satoshi are about to launch back into the US. They've been running their beta self-custody wallet for a little while now, since around July. And they're just about to launch back into the US and create this, self-custodial element to their wallet, which is incredibly popular. The reason those things interrelate is that Jesse uses the POS system from Wallet of Satoshi at the counter, and he was encouraging a lot of people to download Wallet of Satoshi to use as a Bitcoin wallet, because it is literally the easiest thing. Say what you want about custody versus self-custody, non-custodial, custodial, all of these things. The thing is that it just works, and at that point you want to mitigate as much friction as possible just to get people to see how these things work. So I find it curious that it's really cool that powered by Spark, obviously, that Wallet of Satoshi are going to create a self-custody, non-custodial element to their wallet, which is really cool to see. It's literally by far one of the easiest wallets to use, and they're an Australian company. Yeah. So, have you ever bought things with Bitcoin?
Yeah, I have, and I agree that Wallet of Satoshi is the best user experience that I've seen in terms of for a Lightning wallet. So, good luck to them. I think it's great.
Yeah, that wasn't really a Wallet of Satoshi show I was trying to make there. It was more just this ease of being able to use it as a payment, as a means of like a wallet to pay in coffee. And that initiative of the 50% off was really cool. We actually had some cards floating around, so I'm going to post those. These are $10 free Bitcoin cards that we had. And the neat part is that on the back, there's a QR code, but you have to scratch to reveal it. And they went down a real treat with people that were there who otherwise wouldn't have considered it. But one of the curious things that I noticed, and Jesse kind of pointed this out to me as well, there's sort of two people that get that first touch point. They either piques their interest immediately and they want to learn more, or they just simply do not care. What's been your experience in regards to trying to orange pill people, whether it's, you know, showing them how it works for ease of payments or talking about them? Do you get a similar vibe? Like there's people that are like, oh, okay, that's interesting, tell me a bit more, or cool, bro, but like I've got so many other things on my mind, I just don't care.
It's definitely, look, I have to say, I don't put a lot of effort trying to convince people in the real world. I like to, like, digitally, I'm very pro Bitcoin. I like to put it out on the internet because you'll find people that are persuadable. You know, if they come across Bitcoin content, they're already somewhat curious. But I've found it's an uphill battle to the point of not worth my energy to try and convince people in day-to-day life. And I will say, and don't get me wrong, you know, all power to the people out there that are still doing it. But for me, like, I like to, you know, I want to try and orange pill the people in my life that, like, the thing about it is that I'm not trying to, if I want to orange pill someone, it's not because I'm trying to help Bitcoin. It's kind of trying to help them. You know what I mean? Like, it's good for them. So it's like, this is great for you, but not from a perspective of helping the Bitcoin network. Because I just don't think at this point in time, you know, not to be a pessimist, but I just don't think it really, like, it just doesn't make a huge difference if I teach someone how to, like, move some sats. I think Bitcoin's, for me, the thing that I've come to, and I've, like, moved on this a lot over the years, but the thing that I've come to is that it's this fabulous store of value. And essentially, like, Bitcoin's value proposition is that, like, hey, this is a great way for you to, it's a great incentive for you to save money, right? So many people actually really struggle with just saving some money, like spending less than they make. And like, if you can be like, hey, look, if you spend less than you make, not only do you have some savings, but hey, your savings are going to go up a lot over time. That's actually, like, a fantastic, like, that's just such a good use case for Bitcoin that you don't need anything else. I'm not saying, like, yeah, it'd be cool to be in a world where I can go to my local coffee shop and pay it with Bitcoin, but I don't know. I don't frankly, like, care one way or another that much, because it's just like, that's not going to, like, all right, if you don't mind, but zoom out for a second. The big problem that I have, or that I think people have, people my generation, people that I talk to, the biggest problem for young people or middle-aged people is, like, how do I buy a house? That's a big fundamental thing. And people are just like, or even zooming out more, it's like, just too poor, frankly, just too poor. Like, that's the biggest problem people face, just too poor. And it's like, hey, Bitcoin can really help you with that. You're going to have incentive to save your money, and it's going to grow a lot over time. And then that's going to enable you to accomplish these big things in your life. Whereas, like, these smaller things, like, oh, like a cup of coffee, my credit card works pretty well for that. Like, the user experience is not that bad. Like, I tap the card, okay, maybe there's some fees or whatever, but, like, there's fees in Bitcoin anyway. It's not like, it's just not a huge problem that people have. But the being poor problem, or not rich enough, even if you're not poor, even if you just, like, I want more, like, which is cool, like, everybody, it's totally it's such a normal thing for somebody to be like, yeah, I'm actually doing great, but I want more. Like, Yeah, that's very reasonable. How would you know?
I
So it's
get
like
that. Like the medium of exchange thing is a much later proposition. But what I've found talking to people about Bitcoin is that they need to see it actually working and in action, like to make it a little bit more real and a little bit more tangible. So even though it's not tangible, you could argue that neither is the money in their bank account either. But point being is that we've created like graphs and charts. We did Bitcoin Alive earlier in the year. We had this this graph up which showed that in 2016 it was like 1,000 Bitcoin to buy the Australian median priced house. By 2020 it was 50 Bitcoin. By 2024 it was 5. So clearly it's going down and to the right. And I noticed that still didn't quite resonate as much. And I've had chats with people, via the Hard Block Twitter account online, people that are actively complaining about not being able to save for a home. We have a huge housing problem here in Australia that's been manifesting for, years, if not a decade or more. But the notion, whenever I sort of throw out that, well, look, here's the chart, like there's the numbers, check it out. If you'd have saved your deposit in Bitcoin, you could probably buy a whole damn house by now. The pushback that I get is, but I just don't have like any money free by the end of the week, the end of the fortnight, the month, whatever it is, for Bitcoin, because they're fundamentally misunderstanding its investment thesis, let alone, as a savings account, because they do still think of it like an investment thesis. And then my thinking in and around doing sort of the initiatives around at Rise Mofo and elsewhere and getting people to use it is that they can hold it. Like the cards, for instance, they can at least hold that and be like, okay, well, like there's $10 of Bitcoin in there. Cool. Maybe this is worth looking into. Because I feel like, it's like the gold bug. They're always constantly going on about, well, you can't touch a Bitcoin. You can't eat a Bitcoin, as Renek says. And, we all know that that's stupid, but I don't know. We kind of got to meet them where they are. So it's kind of like, look, you can get 50% off your coffee here and check it out. It actually goes up in value and you can use it as a savings account. It's I get the argument on both sides. I've just seen like people are so pessimistic, or either just don't have the reserve of capital that they had, say, prior to 2020. And it's even worse in the even younger generations, like the Zoomers, who they're probably one of the most nihilistic people I've ever met. I had a family gathering a few weeks ago, and I asked a couple of them about Bitcoin, and they all just started talking about crypto, and it was just like, okay, all right, I don't want to be the old guy in the room, but this could help you.
Yeah, it's understandable because getting back to like, I guess Bitcoin can help them, but there is some truth to it, right? Like if you got $200, you got nothing in your, you got $200 in your bank account and you're struggling to get by. Bitcoin can't do that much for you. Like you need to sort out your life in some other ways first, and then Bitcoin can do a lot for you, because Bitcoin is great for people that have some savings. And so the first step is you need to start building savings. You need to build up an income high enough that you can spend less than your income and start saving some money. And once you've got through that, then it's like, great, now you're on the path. You can save in Bitcoin, and that money is just going to grow and grows at a really great rate. But for some Zoomers that are like, oh, I'm poor, I've got $500, like what's Bitcoin going to do? Even if I put, there's a meme out there that's like, wait, if Bitcoin if I put $1,000 in Bitcoin and Bitcoin goes from 100,000 to 200,000, I have $2,000. Like, so it's not going to do shit for me. And it's like, well, yeah, actually, you kind of like, yes, you're right. You're not wrong. Like it's true. But that means that, like, it is tough, but I will say, for me personally, and I only say this for anyone that's listening in that situation, because I felt that way like when I first discovered Bitcoin. When I first discovered Bitcoin, like I was a uni student and I didn't have any money. And I was fascinated by Bitcoin. I wrote my thesis on Bitcoin and all that stuff, but I didn't invest in it because I didn't have any money. And I wasn't like, I was like, it's just more intellectually interesting, but I didn't like, this is over a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that if I like started stacking hard back then, even what would have seemed like an insignificant amount of money in big picture terms, it would be worth a shitload of money today. And that's also true today. Like if you're, 18, 19, 20 and you start stacking today, it's not going to be worth a lot like in 6 months time, but it will be worth a lot in 10 years time. And it's like really hard to have that kind of perspective.
Yeah.
But that's what it takes.
That's
like you just that's what it takes. And people have to figure that out. And you can try like and hey, if like getting them to hold a bit of in like Wallet of Satoshi and then spending on some coffee, if that kind of helps it click for them, then that's awesome. That's awesome. But you have to figure out these like really fundamental stuff, which is like, I'm going to spend less than I make, and I'm going to be really patient. I'm going to have like a 10-year horizon, and I'm just going to keep going because I know I'm going to make it. I know I'm going to make it if I can do this. But you have to have that kind of perspective. If if you're just looking like, I'm struggling and how am I going to get out of this in 3 months? Like, yeah, Bitcoin can't do shit for you. Like that's, but to be honest, not much can. Like that's
right.
the thing. That's the thing. Like, yes, probably not Bitcoin can't do, but like, that's life. Like, you can't change your life in a week. Like, it's almost impossible. You can change it over time. But you can't like flick a switch and go from being unsuccessful to really successful in a short period of time. Nobody can do that. So you just have to adjust your expectations.
It's that high time preference notion that we've effectively grown up with, and it's been pervasive, at least for the last 50 odd years, and counting. That's absolutely correct. And that patience and that cultivation of patience, and even just the curiosity, effectively, like the fact that you were so intellectually curious about Bitcoin early doors, and then but wasn't actively stacking, DCAing, because you couldn't reconcile that, because you needed that money to survive to the end of the week. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the point is that you got to want it. Basically, you got to want it, and if you don't want it, well then have fun staying poor. That sounds super harsh, but like that is the reason, and it's just like anything. If you want to change your life, you need to have time, knowledge, and money. And if you don't have one of them, use the other two to get it. It's as simple as that. Thomas, given your focus on Bitcoin as a store of value, how are you thinking adoption is evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? We've got obviously the institutions here, but I just wanted to ask like just a quick fire, question here. Where the heck is retail, and are they ever going to come into this particular cycle?
Well, I mean, I think the short answer is there is plenty of retail, but they're buying like MicroStrategy mostly, and it was probably certainly peaked a year ago, or maybe a bit less than a year ago. But they're essentially, sometimes people like to talk about like class of Bitcoiners, like your class of 2024 Bitcoiner, or say, or the people that like become a Bitcoiner that year. And I think that the latest kind of quote unquote class of Bitcoiner, they started with like a MicroStrategy. That's just my observation. Obviously, everybody's different. Certainly not these people that are, not your not your friend that went and bought some coffee for the first time, but in general. And I think that what we're seeing now is like, yeah, people are. I mean, I have friends that are buying IBIT, and I think that's like totally normal and kind of expected for, in terms of retail adoption. But with that being said, like retail is, it's a bit like, I'd say we've almost moved on from retail in the sense of retail was first, right? So retail's already been in Bitcoin. The retail that wants to get in Bitcoin has had an opportunity to get in Bitcoin, still has an opportunity, but retail's already, it's not a new story for retail. It's a new story for the institutional investors, and that's what really matters. And I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, the big thing that we're going to see is unlocking of these pools of capitals in the equity and bond markets that are going into Bitcoin via these new bridges being built. Essentially, it's like these, say, treasury companies. It's like a bridge between Bitcoin and equity or Bitcoin and credit markets, and it's unlocking pools of capital to go into Bitcoin that they want to. I manage assets. I invest in bonds. That's my investment mandate. But I'm going to take that money and I'm going to funnel it into Bitcoin. And that's like a brand new thing that's possible now, but not happening a lot. But it's happening to some extent. But it's possible. It's going to happen a lot more going forward over the next few years. Likewise, you have these investors. Like my mandate is investing in my benchmark is the Nasdaq. I invest in Nasdaq listed companies. I have an equity mandate. I get my LPs, pension funds. They provide me with my money to invest in stocks. That's what I do. Now they're going to invest in some Bitcoin stocks, who are then going to buy Bitcoin. So you have these kind of unlocking of equity and bond capital, which is far and away bigger than, say, Bitcoin, right? Like the bond market, this is $300 trillion bond market. So a lot of money sitting in bonds, hundreds of trillions sitting in equity. A lot of money there, $2 trillion in Bitcoin right now. So you're going to have money sitting in Bitcoin, sitting in equity, and sitting in fixed income buckets that, for historical reasons, are like, it's difficult to move out of those buckets. It's fixed income money. It's going to stay fixed income money. But now, through these kind of Bitcoin treasury vehicles, you're creating a bridge between them. So that's what I think is going to happen over the next 5 years. Is some of that that's an avenue for that capital to be unlocked and flow into Bitcoin. You're also going to see more Bitcoin ETF adoption. BlackRock has 750,000 Bitcoin, or the total Bitcoin ETFs have well over 1 million Bitcoin, getting close to 1.1 million Bitcoin. That'll probably go to 2 million within a couple of years, right? So all of this to say, it's the institutional story, which is if you want to look at like the news story. In terms of retail adoption, it'd probably be just through like, investing in my using my super fund in Australia, or IRA in America, and this sort of thing. Pension, like that's where people will get the chance to do it. Also, it goes in cycles, right? Like Bitcoin is this financial asset, and there will probably come a time, a narrative, a story again where Bitcoin becomes more useful from a self-custody perspective. But that there's not like a great urgency around that right now. There's no urgency there, because generally speaking, things are going pretty good. This isn't like COVID era where the world, like the box, the geopolitical world or your local world was kind of shaken up, and it was like, I better get some, self-custody so I can be more flexible with like what state I live in and this kind of thing. That's not really the world we live in today. It might happen again in the future. It'll happen again for sure in the long extent of like the long term, over the next 100 years, it's just about guaranteed that there'll be a time when it's going to happen again. But who's to say if it happens in the next 3-5 years? I mean, probably not. But I don't know. You know, that's just see what happens.
Let's see what happens. You've got your BlackRock daily tweets. Now, do you do that manually, or you've got like is that on an automation? It sort of just checks the thing and then sends out the tweet on auto. Like how you work in that? Curious.
No, I've got it manually, but I've it's kind of a bit of both actually. I've a bit of both.
It's very helpful. I mean, the fact that they buy effectively, you know, almost the daily issuance, if not over the daily issuance, almost on the daily, is pretty extraordinary, which goes to show just how many sellers there are in the market as well, given the fact that they're buying, you know, in excess of 430 Bitcoin per day. Your newsletter, Let's Shill It, btcwealth.com, and you're the founder of Apollo Sats with your brother. Is that correct?
Yeah, with a couple of co-founders, but yes, with my brother Julian and another founder, Sahil. Yeah, that's right.
Nice. So tell me just quickly about your experience in the Bitcoin space, doing a Bitcoin startup. It ain't easy. Like, you know, it's you must have learned a heck of a lot, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we launched Apollo in 2022, and I think there's been a couple of, I mean, a lot of learnings that I would say, only some of it's Bitcoin related, some of it's just the nature of you know, building a product that that works really well for building a business. I mean, I think one of the findings is that it's not enough to build something that people love. You have to build. It's quite interesting, but you're actually better off having a product that people hate, that they will want to, that they'll be forced to pay for that they need. You know, like Jira, for example, Atlassian. Everybody hates their products, but they're such a great company. It's such a great company. You know, you look at the actual, like the Jira and Confluence, anybody that's used that stuff hates it, but it is such a fabulously successful company. On the other hand, you like our experience with Apollo was we had so many people that like loved what we're doing, but it's not enough to really build like a really successful business around it. You need to have you need to have a lot of paying customers in order to really make a great successful business. And so that was something that was an interesting learning. I think on the Bitcoin side, for me, what I found was, and this probably colors our earlier conversation, I was frankly a little bit, just to say, disappointed with the Lightning Network. We really put the Lightning Network as kind of a centerpiece of what we were working on, wanted to use in terms of making, for those that are unfamiliar with Apollo, it's based upon, you can kind of think about it like it's a TripAdvisor for the Bitcoin ecosystem, and there's people leave reviews for different products and services and are incentivized to write reviews because you get paid in Satoshis to write these reviews. And so we relied heavily, well, we relied on people getting paid in Bitcoin to write these reviews. But the amount of struggles people had with the Lightning Network, be it that payments failed, or they just were unable to handle the user experience, it just was frankly really difficult. Like, and that's not something that people, a lot of Bitcoiners want to talk about, like, because people want to, there's a difference between what you want to be true and what actually is true. Like, I would, you know, I want the layer 2 Bitcoin user experience to be so good that it's just so seamless and it works so well and people love it. My actual experience is that the payment failure rate is too high. People struggle with things there, and because it's a decentralized system, people have different apps and they use it, and then it's like, oh, they gave you a Lightning invoice, but they didn't say submit on their app how many Satoshis they wanted for their invoice, so it caused a bug, or maybe they were using some kind of the self-custody setup and their node didn't have the right liquidity, or even just frankly custodial to custodial payments. You would think that's got to work 100% of the time, right? Like that's just got, if I'm going from one custodial wallet to another custodial wallet, that is going to work. Yeah, not every time. I mean, usually it works. But the problem is that we're trying to run like at a pretty good scale, and you can't have a situation like, having a like 5% failure rate. It's just not good enough. Like it just doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't work. So like when you go, it's sort of fine when you go for a cup of coffee, because like 95% of the time it works, and then if it doesn't work, it's like, oh, let me try that again. Oh yeah, okay, great, it worked. But on an online experience where someone's like gives you, here's the invoice, and where's my money, and it didn't work. But like it just, this was just my own personal experience with it. It was trouble, and I say that as someone like, I'm not like. I'm not thrilled about it. I mean, I like would love to see. I consider myself have been. I mean, well, to put it in perspective, we were so bullish on the Lightning Network that we wanted to build a whole company around it. So it's not to say we weren't like. We're not looking. I wasn't looking for it to not. I was looking for it to work. I wasn't looking for it to have problems. But that was just my experience. So that's just something that I've found, and I wouldn't try and like right now. I'm less excited about that technology, is I guess what I would say, and that brings me back to, it doesn't make me less excited about Bitcoin. Because I still thoroughly believe in the store of value concept for Bitcoin, and I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin will figure out like a layer 2 model that works really well over like a long enough period of time. But I just don't think that's true today.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this comes from real world experience though too. So you as you said, you built your entire business effectively around this L2, and it just didn't quite do what you expected it to. And it's a cliche, obviously, or at least for Bitcoiners that have been around the trap for a while, but we are incredibly early, and these are some of the pitfalls and perils. And, fair play to go out there and actually put yourself in the arena and try and build something that that people will want for sure. Like it's an incredibly valuable thing. TripAdvisor, but for Bitcoin related companies and just all other companies, really, if you think about it, imagine the incentive of getting paid in Bitcoin. That's just just for writing a review. I used it personally and found it very useful, and never actually had a failed payment. Just for posterity. Now, I just want to round out the conversation. I saw a post, could have been a screenshot, but I'm pretty sure it was an original post on our Bitcoin on Reddit. And usually don't go on Reddit because it usually doesn't work for my VPN, so I just don't worry about it. But I saw a post that said, journey from whole coiner to half coiner. Sold half Bitcoin when it hit 100K last year to buy some alts. Expected alt season, I'll be making easy 4 to 5x in a few weeks and then rotate back into Bitcoin. Let's have a moment for the alts, which are currently negative 70%. I can see why you guys say to never sell your Bitcoin. just a nice little lesson in there to stay humble and stack sats. Have you dabbled in alts, Tom?
No. Well, I've never. I would say I've never invested in alts. I've played with. I've used a little, like I've used some Ethereum apps and this sort of thing.
It's a safe space. It's cool. We're a Bitcoin only company, but it's a safe space. You can.
No, as in, I've like used. I'm, you know,
I lost money on ETH. I'll just say it there. Like that.
I haven't. I've never. Yeah, I've never. I didn't, and it was just more of probably a function of because it took me, like, I was sort of watching Bitcoin for a long period of time before I got into Bitcoin, and I watched I think it depends on when you get into Bitcoin and whether which part of a cycle you get into it. But I watched on the sidelines. I saw what happened in 2017. I saw the million altcoins get decimated relative to Bitcoin, and it's sort of I don't know. I think it's clear enough for me that Bitcoin is the only real investable asset. So I haven't really ever participated from investing in alts. But with that being said, I played with it just from like how does this work? Oh, like what is MetaMask? What happens here? Like, I've had to play with it. It didn't make me more bullish on Ethereum, actually, which is interesting. I sort of wonder if a lot of the people that use it or maybe are investing in it I wonder if they've ever actually tried like using it, because it's such a crazy concept to be like, oh, I'm gonna hold my money in my internet browser, like serious investment money. Like, that's like, you're gonna get hacked, right? Like, that's like, you're gonna just lose your money. Like, that to me is such a crazy concept. So it's never been appealing. But I've certainly like played with it out of curiosity in terms of like, oh, how do I use this app, or what is going on here? I've checked it out before, but no, from an investment perspective, yeah, I guess
you haven't sold half a Bitcoin in order to rotate into alts in order to try and make more Bitcoin, I guess, is the TLDR there. I presume so. I certainly haven't.
No.
The notion is to DCA. That's the right move. And if you're going to do fat stacks, maybe do it with your super and stack, Bitcoin in an SMSF, which we also do provide at Hardblock. Tom, I just wanted to say thanks for jumping on the call and joining us at Australian Bitcoin Podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. And, we miss Mike. We'll see him next time. He can give us the full wrap of the Bitcoin Asia conference. And in the meantime, keep stacking sats on hardblock.com.au. Don't forget, we've got the Easy Bitcoin booklets, which are still around the traps. You can go to your local meetup and they'll probably have a couple. If you're a meetup organizer and you want some books, reach out to us on Twitter via DM. And last but not least, go to learn.hardblock.com.au and send any of the people that you're trying to orange pill, whether they're trying to buy coffee or save for a house. It doesn't matter. They'll find some value in there, mate. And anyway, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.